Hello, people. I hope y'all having a good day. Because I'm having a good day. So it's been a long day, but a good day nonetheless. Yeah. Morning or good evening. And yeah, we're in First Samuel, still, and then um, we're gonna read chapters. First Samuel chapters I wrote it down 15 through 17, and then go into Psalms 82, and from there we can wrap up the day. There was a devotional, so that will be in the description, and y'all can watch it. It was about David, who we know is going to be the next king that kind of gets risen up to take Saul's place after Saul was disobedient and performed his own sacrificial ritual instead of waiting for Samuel. So Saul kind of messed up there. He loses his ability to he loses the kingship, crown, throne. He loses the throne. And it is given to, Samuel says that God will raise someone who is after his own heart, and in this case that's David. So in the devotional, it is, by the time Israel becomes a nation, their priesthood is already totally corrupt. So people ask for a king to lead them, and God anoints David. In this video, we'll explore David's role as a priestly king and his failure to live up to the calling. The story of David ultimately points to the arrival of Jesus, the true royal priest who will bring the blessings of Eden and restore humans to their divine calling. So that's what... Go ahead. I again like the illustration because the visual impact really helps me learn things and incorporate things in my mind. In 1 Saul 15, Saul defeats the Amalekites. One day Samuel said to Saul, "It was the Lord who told me to anoint you as king of his people, Israel. Now listen to this message from the Lord. This is what the Lord of heaven's armies has declared. I have decided to settle accounts with the nation of Amalek for opposing Israel when they came from Egypt. Now go and completely destroy the entire Amalekite nation, men, women, children, babies, cattle, sheep, goats, camels, and donkeys." So Saul mobilized his army at Telaim. There were 200,000 soldiers from Israel and 10,000 men from Judah. Then Saul and his army went to a town of the Amalekites and lay in wait in the valley. Saul sent this warning to the Kenites: "Move away from where the Amalekites live, or you will die with them. For you showed kindness to all the people of Israel when they came up from Egypt." So the Kenites packed up and left. Then Saul slaughtered the Amalekites from Havilah all the way to Sur, east of Egypt. He captured Agag, the Amalekite king, but completely destroyed everyone else. Saul and his men spared Agag's life and kept the best of the sheep and goats, the cattle, the fat calves, and the lamb, everything. In fact, that appealed to them. They destroyed only what was worthless or of pure quality. Weren't they supposed to destroy everything? I'm pretty sure they were supposed to destroy everything. The Lord rejects Saul. Then the Lord said to Samuel, I am sorry that I ever made Saul king, for he has not been loyal to me and has refused to obey my command. Samuel was so deeply moved when he heard this that he cried out to the Lord all night. Early the next morning, Samuel went to find Saul. Someone told him Saul went to the town of Carmel to set up a monument to himself. Then he went to Gilgal. When Samuel finally found him, Saul greeted him cheerfully. "May the Lord bless you," he said. "I have carried out the Lord's command." "Then what is all of the bleating of sheep and goats and lowing of cattle I hear?" Lowing of cattle I hear. So basically, why are these animals making all this noise? Samuel demanded. It's true that the army spared the best of the sheep, goats, and cattle, Saul admitted, "but they are going to sacrifice them to the Lord your God. We have destroyed everything else." Then Samuel said to Saul, "Stop. Listen to what the Lord told me last night." "What did he tell you?" Saul asked. And Samuel told him, "Although you may think little of yourself, are you not the leader of the tribes of Israel? The Lord has anointed you king of Israel, and the Lord set you on a mission and told you, 'Go and completely destroy the sinners of the Amalekites until they are dead.' Why haven't you obeyed the Lord? Why did you rush for the plunder and do what was evil in the Lord's sight?" "But I did obey the Lord," Saul insisted. "I carried out the mission he gave me. I brought back King Agag, but I destroyed everyone else." But there are no buts when following the Lord's orders. "I did it, but I brought back King Agag, but I destroyed everyone else. Then my troops brought in the best of the sheep, goats, cattle, and plunder to sacrifice to the Lord your God in Gilgal." But Samuel replied, "What is more pleasing to the Lord, your burnt offerings and sacrifices, or your obedience to his voice? Listen, obedience is better than sacrifice, and submission is better than offering the fat of rams. Rebellion is as sinful as witchcraft, and stubbornness is as bad as worshiping idols. So because you have rejected the command of the Lord, he has rejected you as king." Saul pleads for forgiveness. Then Saul admitted to Samuel, "Yes, I have sinned. I have disobeyed your instructions and the Lord's command. For I was afraid of the people and did what they demanded. But now please forgive my sin and come back with me so that I may worship the Lord." But Saul replied, "I will not go back with you. Since you have rejected the Lord's command, he has rejected you as the king of Israel." As Samuel turned to go, Saul tried to hold him back and tore the hem of his robe. And Samuel said to him, "The Lord has torn the kingdom of Israel from you today and has given it to someone else, one who is better than you. And he who is the glory of Israel will not lie, nor will he change his mind, for he is not human that he should change his mind." The Lord has never really had to change his mind. There have been moments where his anger has been quelled and he showed mercy instead of following through. But he never committed his mind to an act and then gone, "Yeah, no, I won't do it then. You've changed my mind." So then Saul pleaded again, "I know I have sinned, but please at least honor me before the elders of my people and before Israel by coming back with me so that I may worship the Lord your God." So Samuel finally agreed and went back with him, and Saul worshiped the Lord. Samuel executes King Agag, whatever. Then Samuel said, "Bring King Agag to me." Agag. Agag arrived full of hope, for he thought, "Surely the worst is over and I have been spared." But Samuel said, "As your sword has killed the sons of many mothers, now your mother will be childless." And Samuel cut Agag 2 pieces before the Lord at Gilgal. Then Samuel went home to Ramah, and Saul returned to his house at Geba of Saul. Samuel never went to meet with Saul again, but he mourned constantly for him, and the Lord was sorry he had ever made Saul king of Israel. So yeah, that happens. I'm gonna copy, because I think these verses are very important. When he's like, what is pleasing to the Lord? Verses 1 Samuel 15:22 and 23. I think those are very, like, keep that in your minds. Because rebellion is as sinful as witchcraft, and stubbornness is as bad as worshiping idols. So, like, don't think because you're stubborn and you're trying to be faithful that, like, submit. Samuel anoints David as king. Now the Lord said to Samuel, you have mourned long enough for Saul. I have rejected him as the king of Israel, so fill your flask with olive oil and go to Bethlehem. Find a man named Jesse who lives there, for I have selected one of his sons to be my king. But Samuel asked, how can I do that? If Saul hears about it, he will kill me. Take a heifer with you, the Lord replied, and say that you have come to make a sacrifice to the Lord. Invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you which of his sons to anoint for me. So Samuel did as the Lord instructed. When he arrived at Bethlehem, the elders of the town came trembling to meet him. What's wrong? They asked. Do you come in peace? Yes, Saul replied. I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Purify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice. Then Samuel performed the purification rite for Jesse and his sons and invited them to sacrifice too. When they arrived, Saul took one look at Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. But the Lord said to Samuel, don't judge by his appearance or height, for I have rejected him. The Lord doesn't see things the way you see them. People judge by outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. Then Jesse told his son Abinadab to step forward and walk in front of Samuel. But Samuel said, this is not the one the Lord has chosen. Next, Jesse summoned Shimei, but Samuel said, neither is this one the Lord has chosen. In the same way, all 7 of Jesse's sons were presented to Samuel. But Samuel said to Jesse, the Lord has not chosen any of these. Then Samuel asked, are these all the sons you have? There is still the youngest, Jesse replied, but he's out in the fields watching the sheep and goats. Send for him at once, Samuel said. We will not sit down to eat until he arrives. So God is making this way for him and holding his space. That's why when people are like, oh, I need it to be mine, I started rushing. I go after a lot of things. I go after a lot more things now. And I've started to realize and tell myself that it's not really about whether I can get it. Like I'm trying to rip it out of the hands of someone else. It's not about that. If it is mine, the position will be held for me. And that's what, like, I just gotta convince myself for that. If it's mine, I'll have it. Like, if it's mine, it's already mine. I'm not. If it's mine, I got it already. I'm just trying to clarify that, like, okay, I'm gonna put my work into it to bring it to me, but it's not that I'm taking it from elsewhere to give it to me. It was mine. You understand? It's confidence that I'm instilling. Every time I go out and I'm trying to reject myself from something, it's like, no, if it's mine, it's gonna be mine. The position's gonna be held. Just the way, like, Samuel was like, we won't even eat until your youngest son is back here, ready to be in front of us. All right. I think that's really important. So Jesse sent for him. He was dark and handsome with beautiful eyes, and the Lord said, this is the one. Anoint him. So as David stood there among his brothers, Samuel took the flask of olive oil and he had brought and anointed David with the oil. And the Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon him from that day on. Then Samuel returned to Ramah. David serves in Samuel's court. Now the Spirit of the Lord had left Saul, and the Lord sent a tormenting spirit that filled him with depression and fear. The Lord sent the spirit that filled him. The Lord sent the spirit that filled him with depression and fear. And that's the thing too, is like, you hear like depression and fear and all of that, but those are spirits that we are battling, not necessarily emotions. The emotion isn't depression. Like, it's just, it's what leads you to identify you're feeling depressed, right? Because I'm starting, like, I've come to realize that emotions are not about, oh, I'm feeling this. As someone who hated dealing with her emotions, like, still do, but not as much. I've just realized that emotions aren't about the reaction. There's emotions, and then there's the reaction to said emotions, and everything that the emotion is trying to do is just be like, hey, it's just trying to give you signals that you need to understand and process information. So how you process information isn't on that emotion itself. It's your own behaviors, personality, whatever. It's other factors. So don't hate the emotions for the factors at play. Which comes back to like depression, fear, anxiety. These are spirits of torment. Some of Saul's servants said to him, "A tormenting spirit from God is troubling you. Let us find a good musician to play the harp whenever the tormenting spirit troubles you. He will play soothing music and you will soon be well again." "All right," Saul said. "Find someone who plays well and bring him here." One of the servants said to Saul, "One of Jesse's sons from Bethlehem is a talented harp player. Not only that, he is a brave warrior, a man of war, and has good judgment. He is also a fine-looking young man, and the Lord is with him." So Saul sent messengers to Jesse to say, "Send me your son David, the shepherd." Ha! No. Jesse responded by sending David to Saul, along with a young goat, a donkey loaded with bread, and a wineskin full of wine. So David went to Saul and began serving him. Saul loved David very much, and David became his armor bearer. So Samuel almost secretly goes to anoint David. He anoints David for the new position that he's going to bring in. And then he organizes things so that David can be put into the position he needed. So he was anointed first and then positioned. Anointed and then positioned for what he needed. And it's like, because you sent this tormenting spirit to Saul to open a space for his replacement. Oh, it's so good. He's just, okay. Alright, craftsman. Master craftsman. Just making a way. Okay. Okay, I gotta note that. Also, David was working when he was called. that puts us in uh 1 Samuel 16:22. Then Saul sent word to Jesse asking, "Please let David remain in my service, for I am very pleased with him." And whenever the tormenting spirit from God troubled Saul, David would play the harp. Then Saul would feel better, and the tormenting spirit would go away. 1 Samuel 17. Goliath challenges the Israelites. Then the Philistines now mustered their army for battle and camped between Sokoth in Judah and Azekah at Ephes Damim. Saul countered by gathering the Israelite troops near the valley of Elah. So the Philistines and the Israelites faced each other on opposite hills with the valley between them. Then Goliath, a Philistine champion from Gath, came out of the Philistine ranks to face the forces of Israel. He was over 9 feet tall. He wore a bronze helmet, and his bronze coat of mail weighed 125 pounds. He also wore bronze leg armor, and he carried a bronze javelin on his shoulder. The shaft of the spear was as heavy and thick as a weaver's beam, tipped with an iron spearhead that weighed 15 pounds. So he's piercing you with this thing, but just like smashing you with this thing, because it's so big and it weighs so much. His armor bearer walked ahead of him carrying a shield. Goliath stood and shouted a taunt across to the Israelites. "Why are you all coming out to fight?" he called. "I am the Philistine champion, but you are only the servants of Saul. Choose one man to come down here and fight me. If he kills me, then we will be your slaves. But if I kill him, you will be our slaves. I defy the armies of Israel today. Send me a man who will fight me." Then Saul and the Israelites heard this. They were terrified and deeply shaken, because they're only relying on Saul's powers and arms, his army, his powers, his authority, blah, blah, blah. So they're terrified of this. Like, this man is giant. He looks giant. He's well armed. He's well shielded, Jesse sent David to Saul's camp. Now David was the son of a man named Jesse, an Ephraite from Bethlehem in the land of Judah. Jesse was an old man at the time, and he had 8 sons. Jesse's 3 oldest sons, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shimea, had already joined Saul's army to fight the Philistines. David was the youngest son. David's 3 oldest brothers stayed with Saul's army, but David went back and forth so he could help his father with the sheep in Bethlehem, so that he was working. For 40 days, every morning and evening, the Philistines' champion strutted in front of the Israelite army. Another 40 days. One day Jesse said to David, "Take this basket of roasting grain and these 10 loaves of bread and carry them quickly to your brothers, and give these 10 cuts of cheese to their captain. See how your brothers are getting along, and bring back a report on how they are doing." David's brothers were with Saul in the Israelite army of the valley of Elah, fighting against the Philistines. Who said this? One day Jesse said this to David. Okay. So the father's like, "Go check on your brothers." Here. So David left the sheep with another shepherd and set out early the next morning with the gifts as Jesse had directed him. He arrived at the camp just as the Israelite army was leaving for the battlefield with shouts and battle cries. Soon the Israelites and Philistine forces stood facing each other, army against army. David left his things with the keeper of supplies and hurried out to the ranks to greet his brothers. As he was talking with them, Goliath, the Philistine champion from Gath, came out from the Philistine ranks. Then David heard him shout his usual taunt, to the army of Israel. As soon as the Israelite army saw him, they began to run away in fright. Have you ever seen the giant? The men asked. Have you ever seen the giant? The men asked. He comes out each day to defy Israel. The king has offered a huge reward to anyone who kills him. He will give that man one of his daughters for a wife, and that man's entire family will be exempt from paying taxes. David asked the soldiers standing nearby, "What will a man get for killing the Philistines and ending his defiance of Israel? Who is the pagan Philistine anyway, that he is allowed to defy the army of the living God?" Go ahead, David. And these men gave David the same reply. They said, "Yes, that is the reward for killing him." But then David's oldest brother Eliab heard David talking to the men. He was angry. "What are you doing around here anyway?" he demanded. "What about those few sheep you're supposed to be taking care of?" Oh, he's scoffing at him. I know about your pride and deceit. You just want to see the battle." What have I done now?" David replied. I was only asking a question." He walked over to some of the others and asked them the same thing and received the same answer. Then David's question was reported to King Saul, and King sent for him. David kills Goliath. "Don't worry about this Philistine," David told Saul. "I'll go fight him." "Don't be ridiculous," Saul replied. "There's no way you can fight this Philistine and possibly win. You are only a boy, and he's a man of war since his youth." But David persisted. "I have been taking care of my father's sheep and goats," he said. "When a lion or a bear comes to steal a lamb from the flock, I go after it with a club and rescue the lamb from its mouth. If the animal turns on me, I catch it by the jaw and club it to death. I have done this to both lions and bears, and I'll do this to the pagan Philistines too, for he has defied the armies of the living God. The Lord who rescued me from the claws of the lion and the bear will rescue me from this Philistine." Saul finally consented. "All right, go ahead," he said, "and may the Lord be with you." Then Saul gave David his own armor, a bronze helmet and a coat of mail. David put it on, strapped the sword over it, and took a step or two to see what it was like, for he'd never worn such things before. "I can't go in these," he protested to Saul. "I'm not used to them." So David took them off again. He picked up 5 smooth stones from a stream and put them into his shepherd's bag. Then, armed only with his shepherd's staff and sling, he started across the valley to fight the Philistine. Goliath walked out toward David with his shield bearer ahead of him, sneering in contempt at this ruddy-faced boy. "Am I a dog," he roared at David, "that you come at me with a stick?" And he cursed David by the names of his God. "Come over here, and I'll give your flesh to the birds and wild animals," Goliath yelled. David replied to the Philistine, "You come to me with sword, spear, and javelin, but I come to you in the name of the Lord of heaven's armies, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied. Today the Lord will conquer you, and I will kill you and cut off your head, and then I will give the dead bodies of your men to the birds and wild animals, and the whole world will know that there is a God in Israel." Ooh, he is tough. I kind of want to remember this. I'm sorry. I just want to give it a little special. David's reply is cold. It was a cool reply. Yeah, I'll give you that too, because that's cold. Okay. 1 Samuel 17:47. And everyone assembled here will know that the Lord rescues his people, but not with sword and spear. This is the Lord's battle, and he will give you to us. As Goliath moved closer to attack, David quickly ran out to meet him. Reaching into his shepherd's bag and taking a stone, Taking out the stone, he hurled it with his sling and hit the Philistine in the forehead. The stone sank in, and Goliath stumbled and fell face down on the ground. So David triumphed over the Philistine with only a sling and a stone, for he had no sword. Then David ran over and pulled the Goliath's sword from its sheath. David used it to kill him and cut off his head. Israel routs the Philistines. When the Philistines saw that their champion was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah gave a great shout of triumph and rushed after the Philistines, chasing them as far as Gath and the gates of Ekron. The bodies of the dead and wounded Philistines were strewn all along the road of Sharaim, as far as Gath and Ekron. Then the Israelite army returned and plundered the deserted Philistine camp. David took the Philistines ahead of Jerusalem, but he stored the men's armor and his own tent. As Saul watched David go out and fight the Philistine, he asked Abner, the commander of his army, "Abner, whose son is this young man?" "I really don't know," Abner declared. "Well, find out who he is," the king told him. As soon as David returned from killing Goliath, Abner brought him to Saul with the Philistine's head still in his hand. Tell me about your father, young man," Saul said. And David replied, "His name is Jesse. We live in Bethlehem." Woohoo! Okay, David. A Psalm of Asaph. Yeah, Asaph. God presides over heaven's court. He pronounces judgment on the heavenly beings. How long will you hand down unjust decisions by favoring the wicked? Give justice to the poor and orphan. Give justice to the poor and the orphan. Uphold the rights of the oppressed and the destitute. Rescue the poor and helpless. Deliver them from the grasp of evil people. But these oppressors know nothing. They are so ignorant. They wander about in darkness while the whole world is shaken to its core. I say, you are gods. You are all children of the Most High. Yes. But you will die like mere mortals and fall like every other ruler. Rise up, O God, and judge the earth, for all the nations belong to you. I love that. You are gods. You are all children of the Most High. You are gods. You are gods. You are all children of the Most High. Beautiful. It's just beautiful. I mean, what other note is there to end that on? Like, you are all gods. You are all childs of the Most High. Bless. Have a good day. Bye-bye.